Hello, everyone, and welcome to the season finale episode. I'm super excited. Please welcome another episode. My guest today, her book actually comes out today when this episode airs, but we are recording it beforehand. It comes out August 12th. She's the author of another book called Neruda on the Park. Did I pronounce that right? Neruda
Yes.
on the Park. And her newest novel comes out, and it is called The Grand Paloma Resort. Please welcome Cleyvis Natera. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so excited to be your guest today, Kendall. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. You can tell it's a Friday afternoon by how like mumbled and crazy its first intro was for me. But thank you for taking time out of your day. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Now, I want to talk about your book. So I was lucky enough to get an ARC for it, and I was going through the list and I saw this first, and it's very interesting why I picked the book and then my whole kind of journey reading it to the end. And because, so your novel, I'll ask for a synopsis shortly, but it takes place in the Dominican Republic at a resort. And I actually grew up in the Dominican Republic. I lived in Santo Domingo for 3 years when I was a kid as a diplomat. And so my perspective on that experience is one of privilege and being a white American in that country and visiting the resorts, whether it was the all-inclusive or otherwise for weekends or vacations. And I remember being a kid and being taken to be babysat in, the all kids rooms. Or my favorite memory is my friend and I asking one of the dance instructors if we could perform on stage at the resort, and we did. And so it's a very fond time of my life. And so I was excited to read this. I also love a thriller and mystery aspect. I will say when I picked it up and started reading it, it gave me a lot of reflection that I've already had as an adult of like my experience and then what my experience might have been skewed in because I was a kid or I didn't know certain things. And I think your book gave me a lot of perspective and just was a beautiful novel. And I think was just a great novel to read as I'm an adult now reflecting on my own life. So I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that response. And first of all, this is kind of wild that you lived in the Dominican Republic as a
You know?
diplomat. I was born in the Dominican Republic and I left
Mhm.
when I was 10 years old. And so, just like you, I feel like I have a really um, kind of nuanced relationship with my country of birth and having grown up in the United States and having attained, I would say like my class is significantly different than it was when I was growing up there. And
Mhm.
so much like you, I often think about those kinds of issues when I think, and I go now with my children and I stay in really nice resorts or at really nice Airbnbs and um Airbnbs, and then I'm like, wait, there's no way that if I would have stayed in this country, I could have afforded
Yeah.
these things. So it's kind of
Mhm.
wild, but that's
Yeah.
awesome. I'm so glad to hear that you enjoyed the book. Thank you for reading it.
Yeah. Well, can you give everybody a short synopsis and we can talk a little bit about it?
The Grand Paloma Resort is a novel that takes place over the course of 1 week. It's centrally concerned with two sisters who are both employees of this luxury resort. The plot revolves around, um, the older sister who is a manager at that resort, and she is the highest ranked local, and so she's a local person from the local town who has you know achieved this status as a manager, as a almost executive, right? And her younger sister, has largely been like a daughter to her because they lost their mother when they were very young. And at the outset of the book, we know that their father has been missing for a year. And so, the younger sister is a babysitter and she's just been acting kind of wild, doing ecstasy left and right, partying, and just not taking her job very seriously.
Mhm.
So at the beginning of the book, Laura, the older sister, wants to teach Elena, the younger sister, a lesson. She's like, you know what? It's time for you to grow up. So when there's an accident with a tourist child, Laura decides she's going to pretend that child died so that Elena will learn a lesson and get really freaked
Mhm.
out and scared and just become more adult. And then, you know, over the course of the next week, we find out that, you know, that misunderstanding led to Elena actually putting two local girls at risk, and those girls
Yeah.
go missing. And then we see kind of the spiral that happens from that.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, that's the core of the book.
Yeah, you have a lot of chaos going on in this book, and I have my coffee here. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I'll start by saying the first chapter immediately was very gripping. And, you know, we are opening with this tourist girl that, and then I was trying to babysit and something happens, right? And I was like gripped on the edge of my seat. And I thought it couldn't get like that much crazier. And I think with every kind of chunk of the book, you add in a new chaotic moment, a new chaotic moment, a new twist, a new, you know, character development. And you play with plot and character growth very well because the plot is constantly crazy and the character development and growth or lack thereof is also very crazy. At the beginning of the book, I thought to myself, as the eldest of three girls, Laura's going to be the one that I identify with most. I have a middle sister who is very type B and drives me nuts. And I was like, I get it. Your sister needs to grow up, get it together. And by the end of the book, I don't know that I completely identify with her anymore, but because I think you have such detailed characters and everybody's kind of gray and very human, but you just balance those two things very, very well. So, congrats.
Well, thank you so much. That means so much to me, honestly, because I feel like one of the reasons why, you know, the journey to publication for my first book was a 15-year journey.
Wow.
And, you know, I teach fiction now, and I often tell my students, especially my graduate students, that the reason why I couldn't sell that book is because I did not understand plot. I was just like totally focused on character, totally focused on language. And, you know, it was once I cracked this idea of like propulsion and plot and like what actually
Mhm,
a plot is,
mhm.
I feel like it really opened up the whole world to me because that's what I'm most interested in really is character and character development and just how to make flawed characters human and
Mhm.
interesting and the choices that people make in fiction, which, you know,
Yeah.
I would not want any of these people to be my friends in real life, but I sure loved writing about them.
I agree. I agree. I think it's also very interesting that among all of the chaos that happens, you did create kind of flawed characters. Like you didn't nobody was as black and white or good as and bad as you expected them to be. There were obviously some villains, obviously. But
Yes.
but it was very gray, and I think that part of it too also keeps the reader in the same way that like a mystery does or the plot does, like keeps them reading for more, whether I wanted them to succeed or learn their lesson. I think gray and complicated characters are really fun for that reason.
I agree.
Mhm,
Those are my
mhm.
favorite books.
Yeah. Now, you also wrote through multiple points of view, and we have multiple characters, so many different characters within the book, and a few, I would say a handful that are like more of our main characters. How did you plot and plan who they were? And did any of them come to you before others?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I mean, I think it's so interesting with this book because I actually started writing it as a collection of short stories. And so
Oh,
my original idea about this book was that it was gonna be like a novel in stories, and that you were gonna meet, you know, a certain number of characters. And I had this idea about, you know, 7 characters over 7 days, and you would see them, each of them, a couple of times over the course of the events. And once I started writing the book, you know, especially with this book, things were a little bit different than my first book because I ended up selling the book as a proposal, which is more rare for novels, you know. And I was like, go me. I did it. I'm glad it's not going to take me 15 years because once I had that deadline, I was like, I'm meeting the deadline. But, you know, once we decided to do it as an outline, I had to plot the whole book out to sell the
yeah.
book. And it was really interesting because originally, I scaled back on 7 because, my agent and I talked about it. And he was like, that feels like an awful lot of characters. And I was like, I
Hmm.
agree. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to do this book where it's really only like 3 or 4 people, and then with a sprinkling of other perspectives. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to do that is because I wanted this book to feel like a place book, like a
Hmm.
setting driven book. And I was thinking a lot about the architecture of a resort. And, this building is, very modern. It's, see through glass. And so I wanted this sense of like a visual experience where like you could see like the perspectives actually give you this sense of like the
Hmm.
completeness of the world. And so a
Hmm.
lot of the choices I made, especially with there are a couple of characters that aren't employees. And so I was
Yeah.
sent, and that was one of the ways in which
Yeah.
I violated my own conceit. Because originally I was like, only employees.
Yeah.
And then I ended up like having this one woman she used to work at the resort, but she's not an employee anymore. And then there are some older women who become really important to the Vargas sisters, become really
Yeah.
important to the plot. And one of the things that I've learned as a writer is that you just have to surrender to the story. And so, even though I really didn't plan on having, especially those two perspectives of those kind of
Hmm.
wealthy women in the book, it just ended up being so necessary in that
Yeah.
moment. And I just hope that it's not too disruptive, because sometimes I
Yeah.
have this feeling when I read books with a lot of perspectives, like I get so annoyed at writers. I'm like, keep it together.
Yeah.
Stop play with me, like stay with the
Hmm.
important people. And
Yeah.
so when it came to time for me to write this book, and I was doing
Yeah.
the things that I sometimes find annoying when I read books, I was just like, you know what, I just hope the story itself, like the spine of the story, is strong enough to hold some of those deviations.
Yeah. I think it was. So I want to get into some personal questions for you. So first and foremost, what is your definition of happiness and has that changed over time?
Oh my goodness, this is so profound, Kendall. I think my definition of happiness has definitely changed over time. When, I think right now I would say my definition is um of happiness would be like, I think I'm most happy when I'm with my family, when I'm with my children, when I'm away. I love traveling. So for me, like happiness means traveling. So it also for me means some kind of like financial security, because I
Hmm.
grew up without a lot of money, and there was a lot of stress in my house around finance. So I think for me happiness is also the absence of fear,
Yeah.
or the absence of worry. And so I think about that a lot. When I was younger, I think happiness for me was really rooted in freedom.
Hmm.
And so like the freedom from, I would say, the freedom from responsibilities, like the freedom
Hmm.
from I don't know, like I just, when I was younger, I was a little lazy. Like I didn't really want to work. And so much of like what made me happy was just like talking shit with my friends,
Yeah.
gossiping. So I feel
Yeah.
like when I was younger, I definitely felt like happiness was a lot more like outside of my house, social
Hmm.
spaces, parties,
Yeah.
having fun.
Yeah.
So I think like that has changed. I just saw one of my girlfriends over the last week. She was here from Georgia, and she came to celebrate, her book. She just has an academic book that came out, and we used to party hard. She was in grad. We met when we were both in graduate school. She was at New School. I was at NYU. And oh my goodness, she was gonna go dancing with like a bunch of people after the book event. And I was like, are you crazy? I need to go home. I'm tired. I want to rest. Like, I just wanted to get home and get in my bed. And we were both laughing about that because,
Yeah.
20 years ago, I would have been the first one to be like, sign me up.
Yeah. When do you feel the most like yourself?
These are great questions. I think I feel most like myself when I'm running. I love to
Oh, okay.
run.
Oh my God, you're one of
And
those people? That's
I
crazy.
am. I do. I'm one of the people that does the turkey trot. I know. I'm like one of the
You are.
I am. Every time I see that meme, like, I hope I don't marry into a family that
Yes, that's me. But here's the thing. I've convinced myself that I can really bring to that hypothetical future family. Water bottles, Gatorades, cookies, like that will be
And signs, because
yes,
you
yes,
always need somebody with the signs at the end,
exactly.
you
I will
know?
be your cheerleader every year. I'm not
Yes,
joining.
I love that. But I think I'm most myself when I'm running. And it's really interesting. I think about this sometimes too, because it's really either like, I've run marathons and I've done triathlons. So like I really love endurance sports, and I feel
Mhm.
like there's a part of me that is not inside my head so much when I'm
Mm,
physically active.
yeah,
That it's really freeing too. Like that for me is also a
yeah,
state of freedom. Um, but I definitely feel like the other time when I feel most like myself is when I'm reading, which
yeah,
is like the opposite. It's like complete
yeah.
stillness, holding a book. Like,
Mhm,
I love losing myself. And I think there is like, an overlap over those two activities in
mhm,
Venn diagram when you think about this idea of like escaping consciousness.
mhm.
Because I think like I'm just someone that like lives in my head. I think that's why I've become a writer, is because I really love like thinking about problems and solving problems. And
Yeah.
um it's really nice to be inside a world where like you're more like either receiving or you can get out of your own head.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Before we, go on to our book club episode, can you tell everybody where they can find you and where they can get your book? As this is airing on the day in which the Grand Paloma Resort is released into the world.
Oh my goodness, I'm trying to project myself into that day. I'm gonna be so nervous and happy, and I'm gonna probably be begging everyone I know to buy my book. So I'm glad I get to beg, your listeners to please buy the Grand Paloma Resort. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, at Cleyvis Natera. I also have a website, cleyvisnatera.com, and it has all my information. I am gonna be going on book tour.
Oh,
And so
exciting.
I would love to see folks out there, if folks are in one of those locations where I'll be. The book is available in all major retailers. I'm very lucky because Penguin Random House, my publisher, has a great distribution. And so it's available in all the retailers, all your favorite independent bookstores. So I hope they pick up